with all the world's upheaval, great violence, just pure evil taking place, obviously we would say that this is the handiwork of our adversary, Hasatan. But Mike, is it possible that there is some accountability to be laid at the doorstep of Yah's own people for the evil day that we're living in? So this is Mike Clayton and Barry Phillips with Foundations for Life. We'll get into this intriguing question. At least it's intriguing to me. But Mike, welcome home. And you look like you're almost human again after the jet lag thing is over.
Wait a minute. I was home. Now I'm back in exile. Oh. So you're supposed to welcome me back into exile.
Okay. Right? Well, scratch all that, folks. We're going to go back and start all over again. Just
oh, yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Barry. It was a great time. I'm going to probably tomorrow afternoon be recording an update on that. It'll be available through our website. A lot of great connections there. Had a wonderful time. Succeeded in twisting my ankle within 12 hours of being in Israel. And so I'm still hobbling along today, and it's getting healed, but it still hurts a little bit. So that's the way it is. My joke is that me and Yaakov have something in common. We both hobbled around Israel, so that's okay.
I'll try to keep up with your exalted spiritual status.
Okay. So, yeah, Barry, violence over the whole earth. I just saw a friend of mine a little while ago, and he said, how was Israel? He knew I was there. He says, how was Israel? I said, it was great. He said, well, I'd love to go, but I mean, during these times. And I knew what he was saying in his own mind was like, it's not safe over there. And I said, have you watched the news?
It's not safe anywhere.
Yeah. I felt safer in Israel than I really do overall in the United States. When I got back to New York, I was a little bit on the nervous side, but there was, even though I was around very close to a couple of attempted attacks in Israel, it was like, it's you got this shalom, and you've been there, you got this shalom. So is it possible that the things that are happening around us is because of a spiritual thing, and then the spiritual is tied to the natural is tied to the spiritual, and when we disobey, walk away from the commandments the Almighty has given to us, that it causes something to happen in the earth? Of course, my answer would be yes to that. So consider it like this. How long ago, Barry, was it that the church, quote unquote church, started teaching that the Torah was done away with?
Well, I mean, that goes back to pre-Constantine days.
Marcion?
Earlier. When you go to probably one generation post Messiah's time on earth, the Hellenists were already greatly influencing the assemblies. Mm-hmm. And there was when Rob Shaul says, in the latter days, they will turn away from sound doctrine. It didn't take until our day. It turned very, very quickly. By the time that Yochanan had passed away, he said, it's the spirit of anti-Messiah is already here.
Yeah.
So there was a delegitimizing of the Hebraic content of this walk, and a move away from an engaging or embracing of other cultural influences. So it didn't take, probably, I'm no scholar here on this, but I would say within a few hundred years, 200 or less perhaps, there was already this wave that had started.
I mean, if you look at, and of course this all lays back into the lap of Shaul, the Apostle Paul. that he was the one that taught against the Torah, and so the Torah is done away with. Well, a very brief reading of the book of Acts, which I've been going through the book of Acts for a little while now, a very brief reading of the book of Acts will show you that Shaul was very adamant regarding his upholding of the Torah. So here we have, as you said, in probably the first century, we know with Marcion, Constantine, various ones, this walking away from the Torah. So here's the question. If those who claim to be the body of Messiah, those who claim to be the church, those who claim to be the followers of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through Messiah, if they have been propagating a message that the Torah is done away with for all of these years, is it possible that we're just reaping what they sowed? So here's the question. Is the Almighty saying to us, okay, you want to go with the Torah is done away with? Let me show you what life will be like when it is. When a society totally rejects the Torah, let me show you what the society will look like.
I can agree with that premise. And before someone says, well, I just don't believe that eating kosher is enough to fix the world.
Okay.
Keeping a Shabbat, cleaning up your diet, and embracing the feast days. Those are the big three that we say, if you do those three things, you're good to go. Now, the Torah is much, much more than that.
Oh, yeah.
The Torah is about identifying the correct Messiah. I understand who Messiah is. It's important. But also treating one another in a Torah-based righteous relationship. I want to make a premise here.
Okay.
And, our listeners are welcome to disagree with me on that. They can be wrong if they want to. But I...
First humble statement of the program.
You got to stand your ground, right? When Joseph went into Egypt or Mitzrayim, the famine did not immediately begin. He went through a period of time of servitude and in various situations that he was in. Back home in Israel, the family was operating in dysfunction. I mean, they had been dysfunctional since, Leah entered the picture with Raquel. It began. The brothers were divided. They were deceptive. They had been lying to their father about whatever happened to Joseph as far as their involvement in that. So there was dysfunction, there was deception, and there was division among them. Yehuda had left, the family went down and joined himself to an Adulamite, and they had divided themselves against Joseph, and it was a fractured, dysfunctional family. I think that it could be that the reason that the famine hit the earth is because the single Sadiq status family in the earth that has the ability to hold such judgments back was not in a right place and right state to prevent it. In other words, the world famine could be laid at the feet of the house of Yaakov to some degree. It's not that the world wasn't deserving. And it wasn't that the world, just the earth patterns itself because of the fall of man had degenerated to a place where, as in our day, you have natural weather phenomenon that takes place and it's destructive. If you go to Bereshit or Genesis 18, the cities of the plain are said to be judged
Mhm.
Abraham is interceding, and his intercession is based on the principle of, if there's set a king, if there are righteous men in these cities, they have the potential of turning the cities around because of their righteousness. If they're there, will you prevent the judgment? And Yah agreed down to 10 righteous men. As bad and as wicked as those cities were, and homosexuality was not the first sin that they were dealing with. As bad as they were, then Yah believed that 10 righteous men had an ability to exert righteous influence. There were 10, quote unquote, righteous men, brothers, 11 actually, and a righteous father at home in Israel that could have prevented famine from coming to Israel. But the famine that was politically centered in Egypt had devastating effects in the land of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You would think, well, it can't come here because the righteous men are here.
Yeah.
Evidently, Mike, they were not operating at such level, and the famine hit. So my point is, the school shooting, the horrible school shooting in Texas this week, violence in the land of Israel, rampaging. I just read a report where the IDF had to eliminate a 16-year-old Arab boy who attacked a group of worshipers at Yosef's tomb.
Yeah.
It's unprovoked attacks. People have lost their minds and are operating in pure evil. Is the body of Messiah to some degree responsible because of our failure to treat each other in a Torah-based righteous relationship? And that's a long way of asking that question.
Well, let me back up something here. That when you talk about Joseph's brothers, it's interesting that there was the 7 years of abundance, the 7 years of famine, which is Shemitah. A lot of things that can go on there, right there. Could the famine have been averted if Joseph's brothers had, during the time of abundance, said, and see, the book of Jasher, and I don't hold Jasher as scripture, but the book of Jasher says, I think it's Jasher, that Joseph's brothers knew that he was in Egypt. They had been able to put two and two together. They knew that he had been taken to Egypt. So if they would have left Canaan, been honest with their father, told their father what they had done, then gone to Egypt, found their brother, made it right, bought him at whatever cost back as part of the family, brought him back to Canaan, is it possible that the famine would have been averted? We don't know the answer to that. But is it the dysfunction? The reason the second temple was destroyed is because of unmerited, debased hatred of brethren.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you mentioned kosher. I saw something the other day, and you've said this a couple times through the years, that when the early settlers came to the Chesapeake Bay, that it was totally clear. And it was not until they started harvesting the unclean animals that it is now cloudy. I saw somebody had done an experiment recently. They took seawater, cloudy, dirty seawater, in an aquarium. They put some mussels in there, crustaceans in there, and within a very short amount of time, that water was cleared up. So if the world was to go back to eating kosher, what would happen to the water supply of the world? It would be cleaned up.
Potentially so, yes.
So if something like that could go, it could affect the world's water system, what about the idea that those people who say they're following the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would make sure that their life lines up with the not just Shabbat, kosher, the festivals, but making things right between each other. I mean, I got an example. I'm not going to give it. I've got an example. Let me just say this. Somebody I've tried to reach out to for almost a year now refuses. Are there issues? Yeah. But refuses to let's figure this out. We need to be people that are open to reconciliation. And maybe if we set the standard, and I'm talking to me, I'm asking myself this question along the way, Barry. What is my example to other people? Is it just that they look at me and go, well, he doesn't curse? Is that the only difference between me and other people around me? Or is there really a difference in my life? Because maybe that real difference in my life would make a real difference in their lives, which would make a real difference in others. I don't know. I mean, in the end, we see Yeshua said in Matthew chapter 24, as in the days of Noah. He said the end days will be as in the days of Noah. And the one thing that we're told about of the days of Noah is this: there was violence over the whole earth.
Mm-hmm.
There was violence. Why? Because a people had turned away from the ways of Yah, totally and completely away from. And the judgment had to come. How close are we to that judgment? I don't know. I listened. I was watching the news last night, and not to get political here, but Kathy and I watched something we normally don't do, which was a speech by Mr. Sippy Cup. And you can call me disrespectful. I really don't care. When a person that is in a place of office like the current administration, in my opinion, does not deserve any respect at all. This man stood up last night and over said, "For God's sakes, for God's sakes, for God's sakes." And last week, what was he saying? We need to make sure that abortion goes through. Where's the outcry from him? I have no respect for any of these people. I cannot find it within myself to pray for any mercy for them anymore.
So out of one side of your mouth, you're grieving the loss of children, and out of the other side of your mouth, you're justifying the murder of the unborn child.
Oh, you're not just justifying, you're celebrating it. They're celebrating it.
Let's go back to something other here, Mike, about the family dysfunction. Lest we get the idea that this is a recent generational development. Rav Shaul wrote, "Be careful that you don't devour one another."
Yeah.
Yaakov wrote, "Your tongue is a weapon that murders people." Kifa wrote about deceptions and those that use their words to lead other people astray with their doctrines. Gnosticism, the promotion of knowledge and the extreme position of the individual was already rooted and taking place. So there was dysfunction and infighting and political agendas and all the stuff that we see even now, all the way back then.
Yeah.
This is not a recent or new development, and it's not just for our generation only. As far back as I can remember, in denominational structures, there were political games being played and pastors vying for one another's churches because they thought it was a better deal and all that kind of stuff. People vying for positions of leadership on committees or whatever the reason is in the local church. Churches competing against churches for those who are already on their pews instead of trying to find someone who needs their message to come. So it's not a Hebraic roots thing. It's not a church thing. Judaism is rife with the same divisions and infightings. It's the people who are following after Yah who, for whatever reasons and systems, they don't get along. And it's systematic. It goes back all the way to Abraham, who had in-house problems. It's well deep rooted.
Oh, yeah.
But here's my principle. We can go to the Father and we can cry out against the violence. I've seen the pictures of families that they sent their little kids to school. Mm-hmm. Third and fourth graders, second, third, and fourth graders, from what I read. It's so senseless. It's so demonic. It is such pure evil. It numbs the brain to even think about those moments and what would have been transpiring. And we can cry out against it and we can say, Father, have compassion, and show compassion on those families and help them. The moment we go to the throne and begin to offer those pleas for his mercy and compassion, our adversary would stand against us and say, but they refuse to have compassion on their own adversaries. Mm-hmm. They won't even treat their brother with respect. Father, Master, you cannot hear their prayers because they refuse to act in brotherly love toward one another. And Mike, oftentimes there's nothing we can do but hang our head because we're guilty. And I'm not saying this an accusation against any one individual. I don't have anyone in mind. No personalities in my brain right now. As a general symptom, it's been well written about, well talked about, well preached about. It's time for people to give one another a break. Somebody's going to disagree with you. Wonderful. You're welcome to your opinion and your vantage point and your perspective, and I will respect you for that and give you all the room that you need to have that varying viewpoint. But I'm telling you, I would still want to walk with you as a brother in Messiah, understanding our differences and find common ground. And if our personalities clash, I can keep my mouth shut and not make accusations against someone. And they should owe me and you the same respect. The body has got to learn to show mercy and compassion so that we have the authority to go before the Father in Yeshua and ask for his intervention in our world. Because right now, the difference is not stark enough between those who act in such gross evil fashion and the body of Messiah who was crucifying and murdering each other with their tongues.
Yeah, I mean, I got that. And the thing is, Barry, that the body is only as strong as its individual members. I mean, I got that real good right now because I've got an ankle that's just throbbing. Continues to after about 2 weeks. That's because I'm not smart enough to get off.
Stay off of it.
Yeah, that's my own problem. But so that's my. I got issues. Yeah, no doubt about that. But I think, Barry, what I'm kind of discerning in the midst of where we're at now. Each person that claims to be a part of the family of Elohim, whether they be Jew, former Gentile, whatever denomination, non-denomination, interdenomination, whatever confused thing you are, I believe that if every single person would get before the Father and say, the problem is not out there, the problem's here. The problem's here. Yeah, I want to be the person that can affect other people's lives. But the society, call it society, the enemy, the media, people are, we talked about this on the phone before we got online. You get in a conversation with somebody right now, and the first thing they're going to talk about is the price of gas while they have a Starbucks cup of coffee in their hand. Really, is that really important? Is the price of gas really the important thing? Or is it how we're treating each other? My own life, the things that need to be dealt with? This is a time that as the world becomes more and more chaotic, we need to be bringing more and more order to our own lives through His Ruach, His Spirit in our lives. This picture, and I'll finish with this one. This picture has become so prominent in my own mind recently. We look in the book of Revelation, and we see the new Jerusalem that's come down from heaven. It has 12 gates. Those 12 gates are made of 12 pearls. And a pearl in Scripture is from an oyster, which is unclean. And each one of those pearls has on it inscribed the name of one of the tribes. That which has been the most dysfunctional family upon this earth one day becomes the entrance into the kingdom of Yah for the nations. Why do we need to wait till it comes for us to go through that transformation? What about beginning the transformation now? Father, take me in my uncleanliness. I know where I came from. I know I'm a piece of dust, a piece of dirt, a piece of sand that became something because it irritated something. Cause me to become a gate for people today instead of an obstacle for people. Are we, each one of us individually, let's don't point fingers at the body and this group and that group and the other group. No. Am I, my personal life, me, am I being transformed into a gate or an obstacle?
I can't put it any more succinctly than that. And we're one or the other, in all honesty.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, let me give people just a very basic. I just told you, I just about to the point of saying I can't deal with Facebook anymore. I'm tired of looking at. No, I can't say that. I don't want to single anything out. Let me challenge people. Go back and look at your Facebook posts over the last month, folks. Go back and read your own Facebook post. It's not difficult. You click your own picture and it brings up your own post. And ask yourself, would anybody look at what I've posted over the last month and think that I'm serious about life? Serious about God? Serious about restoration? Or have the things that I've posted been just really ridiculously stupid.
Tell me how you feel.
Hey, we want a little laugh once in a while, right? We've got, as we're going through the County of the Omer, a mutual friend, Chris Sharp. Chris. Chris is Alabama all the way. And so we've been posting on our Facebook site for our congregation.
Chris, he meant that as a compliment.
Yeah, I do. But we've been posting, and it's become kind of a game for us now to post the number. So we got like 2 or 3 of us, 3 or 4 of us that are sitting there right at midnight, right at sunset the day before, like with your finger on, you got your GIF up there, and you're like, sunset, boom. And so we're posting. So I think it was day 35. Chris found a picture of a 35-point buck and posted on there. On one day he posted, it was like day number 33, and it was a picture of a NASCAR with number 33. Guys, it's not that we can't have fun. Okay, I'm not saying that. But there does come a time in which we become irrelevant.
Yeah. Well, folks, we I don't know if I want to say this or not. We invite your comments on this one today.
Send them all to Barry.
Yeah, Mike's pure and innocent as the driven snow. Mike, go put some ice on your ankle and elevate it, man.
I can blame it on a lingering jet lag, and I'm injured.
There you go. There you go. All right. So we do pray for the victims' families, most recently in the school shooting. Everybody's devastated by this. This is horrific. And so the political arguments have already started about who's at the root and the blame. I tell you who's at the root of the blame. This is the fall of man. This is man finding another level of depravity and delusion and just evil. And if you think we're done, not yet.
No,
not yet.
And if you're wondering if you want to know how to pray, look at the Psalm 122, verse 6. Shalom, shalom, Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Why? Why does it say to pray for the peace of Jerusalem? Because the world will have no peace until the city of peace, Jerusalem, has peace.
Amen.
Which is when the Messiah is seated upon a throne, and the Torah goes forth from Yerushalayim, the word from Mount Zion. They will beat their swords into plowshares, and will learn war no more. You want to know how to pray? Psalm 122, verse 6. It's right there.
Amen. Folks, we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you for sharing on your social media, for your comments, for your prayers. We'll see you again next week.